Okay, I'm going to start with the chunk of clay after I cut off the top of it, and now I'm going to smash it down on the table a little bit to try to round it. Hit it with your hands. This is an old 2x4 that's been cut up into a clay tool, which works really well. You can also use a kitchen tool, if your mom lets you. If she doesn't let you, go outside and see if you can find a stick, or just keep mashing it. Sticks are easy though. You can find them outside quite easily. But notice how if I just mash it on the table, I can start to round it off, okay? If it's not moist, if you think you want it moister, just mist it a little bit. If you don't have a mister, get some water in a glass and brush it on, okay? I'm going to just use the mister, but you certainly could use a brush. There's a little brush in your paint if you don't have any other brush at all. Otherwise, just put a paper towel over it for a while. Just take a paper towel, moisten it, and wrap it around it, and just let it sit. Just long enough to kind of bring it back to life again, okay? Now, once you get your ball of clay rounded out, what you're going to want to do is take your two thumbs. I'm going to start with kind of a tall shape here because I want a tall piece when I'm done. So if I start tall, it's more inclined to already be going that way. And I'm going to put my two thumbs in the center and push down. Okay? Now what I'm also doing as I'm pushing down is I'm squeezing the clay between my finger and my thumb. And as I squeeze it, you can see I'm also pulling it up. And this is why it's called a pinch pot. What's really interesting about the pinch pot, I think, is that this movement I'm making of pinching and pulling up is the same exact movement that the potter's wheel replicates. Because on the potter's wheel, what you do is you hold your hand like this and bring the clay up. And rather than you turning it, the wheel turns it. So it's the same thing that happens on a potter's wheel. And actually, in the Zhou dynasty, they did have the beginnings of potter's wheels. So some of their work is a combination of coil built, pinched out, and wheel worked. But I can show you some of those in our lesson. When we get to the lesson, I can kind of point out pots that might have been done on the wheel. I think they had the wheel in Egypt in 3000 BC. Sumer had a potter's wheel, I believe. So potter's wheels go back a long, long time. But there's some cultures that never use them. They've just always done either coil building or the pinch pot. And look at, I can get quite a ways up there with this method. I've got a lot of clay in the bottom. It's real bottom heavy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it on its side. I'm using the heel of my hand here to try to work some of that clay out of the bottom and up into the side of the pot. And this is also something you do when you're throwing pots, is try to get the clay out of the bottom and up into the walls. You don't do it this way on a potter's wheel, obviously, but it's the same thought behind it, is how do I get that clay up into the walls of my pot? And you can see I'm just using my hand. I also could use this paddle and start bringing it up that way. Narrow that bottom down, work that clay up into the sides, and then go in and pinch it again. Okay? And you can't feel what I'm feeling, but you can certainly see what I'm doing. And what I'm trying to do is stretching the clay thin and pulling it up, okay? Because I want to make a taller vessel. This is a lot of clay. You certainly could use less. If you felt better starting out with less and making a smaller vessel, that's fine. I'm going to leave my walls a little bit on the thick side because I want to carve into this. And that'll be another part of the lesson. We're going to actually carve into it and decorate it using that method along with painting on it. So, if you think you're going to want to carve a little bit, give yourself some kind of thick walls to work with, okay? Now what's happening, I'm down inside of it, I'm smoothing it out. Can you see that? See how I'm smoothing it out in there? Getting rid of some of my marks. And the reason I'm doing this now is I'm going to try to start to close this up a little bit so it's not such an open pot. If you want an open pot, that's fine. But I just want to show you how to think about closing it if that's what you want to. So I'm getting most of my marks out, getting it smoothed out so it's nice inside of there. And then I'm going to start coaxing it in. This is also something you do on the potter's wheel. It's called collaring when you do it on the potter's wheel. As it goes around, you bring it up like this. You may have seen somebody do that before. And I'm doing the same thing here. I'm slowly bringing it in, pinching it into place, and then I'm going to get my tool out here, and I'm going to start elongating the whole pot so that it becomes more like a vase. I'm really tapering the bottom. The way that I'm hitting this, it's causing the bottom to taper down. And now actually I'm going to turn it over and try to do the same thing where I'm bringing the top, and see how I'm kind of pulling it towards me, tapering the top. It may seem like it hasn't got much of a form, but you'll see here in a minute it's got a lot of form to it. What I have now is the beginnings of a vase, okay? And I'm going to stop what I'm doing here in a second. And actually my clay, this is funny stuff. It's not really clay. I guess you knew that. It's fake clay. And so it really dries out quickly, and you're going to have to be very careful about that. So I'm going to miss mine. And actually I'm going to go in here with my plastic spoon. Great tool. Get one at any fast food restaurant or picnic supply or whatever, you know. And what I'm going to do, I've got the water on there, and it's really made it nice and smooth. You can see that. Isn't that lovely? It's just really nice. Just really nice and soft. And so I'm going to use a spoon to start smoothing this out. And this is very similar to the burnishing technique that we learned about in our last lesson. Early potters all over the world burnished their pots because it helped waterproof things. Glazes didn't come into being for quite a while. They hadn't figured out how glass was made, because a glaze is really glass. And so what they were doing was trying to seal up their pots on the inside more than on the outside, but they burnished inside and out, but to seal them and waterproof them. The Egyptians had very, very rudimentary glazes very early on. China, I think glazes start showing up in the Han Dynasty. I'll check on that. I'm not sure that's correct. I'll let you know when glazes start coming into being. I got a crack here. I'm going to go in and moisten it and just kind of work it and try to get that to close up a little bit. And I'm kind of going back and forth, just trying to actually just compress the clay to try to get it to close up a little bit, okay? The wall's getting kind of thin there. So what I'm going to try to do is take actually I'll just take a piece of clay off the top of this. I'm going to string it out. I'm going to go into my crack just like this and fill it with this other piece of clay. Almost like putty. Let's see if that works. That worked pretty nicely. Great. So now we know that we can do that too, okay? You can fill your cracks. Some of them you can smooth out. If as you're doing this, your spoon starts being resistant, moisten your clay a little bit, okay? And now I've got kind of a nice little vessel going here. I could keep my top kind of free-form, organic, the way the clay is going. That's fine. It has a kind of flower-like quality to it, like a bud, like the bud kind of form. One thing I want to say though, these aren't going to be waterproof, so you're going to have to use these for dry things, and you cannot eat out of them. Okay? I want to make that very clear. This is strictly ornamental. Strictly ornamental. I'm going to put some ribs in mine for decoration. And this is all I'm going to do for the video for today. What I would like to do, I'll do another video later about decorating because I want to do some carving on this, but I'm going to let it set up a little bit and kind of maintain its form. If you wanted to put a rim on this, that's something you could do. I have some extra clay here. I'm going to take out a little bit of clay, and you'll have extra clay too because you cut that chunk off at the beginning. If you cut a bigger chunk, if you cut your thing in half, that might be a good idea too. I'm going to roll out a coil, and then I'm going to score the top of this. Scoring means to scrape it with a fork and give it a rough edge like that, okay? So I'm going to score the whole top edge, and then I'm going to score my coil. My coil's not long enough, so I'm going to stretch it out just a bit more because I want to run it around the top and give this top edge a kind of finished look to it. After you score both surfaces, you always score both surfaces. It works like glue. You score it, you put this in, run it around the top, and then you can go back in and see how that's going to be a real nice final edge of termination on the top there. Very nice. Then I'm going to go in with my spoon and kind of pull this down. Let's do this where you can see it. I'm just going to kind of blend this in, and it gives it a nice top to the vase. Okay? When you're doing this, you're going to want to have a cloth down on your table. I had a piece of canvas down, but it was white and you couldn't see the clay very well, so I grabbed this flannel sheet that I had sitting around that I don't use anymore, and it seemed like a good surface to work on, and you could see what I was doing because it's a nice background to the white. Notice how my other finger is inside supporting everything I do. If you don't do that, you're just going to get everything bent out of shape. You've got to always support what you're doing. You use one hand to support the work of the other hand, okay? Good. Now I'm going to go all the way around. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to resolve my form and mess with it and fuss with it a little bit off camera. And now I'll come back and we'll talk about decoration after I'm done. You want to be sure. Now see, I've got the whole outside edge done. Now I'm going to go in and make sure that that inside edge looks nice too, okay? So go in and try to fuss with that a little bit. This spoon is just such a good tool. This is a clay tool I bought in the store. You can actually go buy tools for doing this sort of thing. But I don't think that's necessary. So just go in and smooth everything out. You might have some cracks forming inside. Go in and smooth over those. The cracks aren't going to hurt anything because we can't use these for water, so it's just going to be for dry stuff anyway, so the cracks aren't going to really hurt anything. Okay? I want to kind of moisten that top edge because I really want to play with this a little bit, and you need moisture. Moisture with clay is like oil in your car. It's what keeps it from keeps from having friction, so things flow freely, you know. And so it's kind of like having oil on my pot so that my fingers can run around there nicely. So now I've got this nice upper lip. And like I said, I'm going to fool with this form a little bit, see what else I can do. I got stuff going on that I'm not interested in, and I'm going to change that a little bit, and I'm going to see if I can't make it into this elegant little vessel. One little finishing thing here on the bottom to try to taper that down. It's not quite so dumpy now that I've kind of pulled that down on the bottom. You could actually put a foot on it too. You know, I could put another coil of clay on the bottom here and make a foot on it too. But again, you'd have to score both surfaces, but I just want you to see what it would look like. I will attach this later by scoring. But that elevates it and makes for a nice little vessel too. Okay? So that's it for now. When you're done, at this point, what I'm going to do is put it back in a plastic bag so that it doesn't dry out until I can get back to it later and work on it some more. And I'll keep it standing up. Okay? Wrapped up in plastic for another time. And then I will work on the other part later.